My name is Ethan Moore, and I'm 36 years old. I live in Portland now, run a small real estate firm, and most days, my life is quiet. But what happened years ago, it never really let me go. And recently, something forced it all back into the light. It started when I received a letter. Not in the mail, no stamp, no return address. It was slid under my apartment door in the middle of the night. One plain white envelope. Inside, only 4 words, handwritten in shaky ink, "Go back." He knew. I knew instantly what it meant. He was my father. And back meant Brookridge, the town I left behind 17 years ago and swore I'd never set foot in again. The next day, I packed a small bag, left everything on pause, and drove across state lines in silence. Brookridge hadn't changed much. Same crumbling sidewalks. The same fog in the air, like the town was always half asleep. But the house looked different. Cold, even in daylight. The house I once called home. Inside, the air felt heavy, like it had been holding its breath since I left. I walked through slowly, each creaking floorboard groaning under memories I'd buried long ago. My father's old study was untouched, except for one thing, a loose panel under the desk. I pried it open. Hidden beneath the floorboards was a small wooden box. Inside, a faded photograph of my mother holding me as a child. Taped to the back, in my father's handwriting, "Forgive me." It's all in the ledger. But there was no ledger in the box. Just an old key. I didn't sleep that night. Because the only ledger my father ever kept was locked away in the attic. And that attic was the one place I was warned, over and over, never to enter. I stood at the bottom of the attic stairs, key in hand, heart pounding louder than the creaking wood above me. My father had once told me, "Some doors stay closed for a reason, Ethan." But now I had the key. And I had a reason to turn it. The attic door groaned open, and the scent of dust and age spilt out like time itself had been sealed away. The single overhead bulb flickered as I stepped in. What I saw didn't make sense at first. Rows of boxes lined the walls. Each was labeled with names I didn't recognize. But in the far corner, separate from the rest, was a locked cabinet. It was old, iron-latched, and covered in a faded gray sheet. I pulled the cloth away and used the key. Inside, it wasn't money. It wasn't property deeds. It was true. Stacks of journals, voice tapes, and a folder labeled "The Trust." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were documents, all bearing my father's signature, transfers, account logs, and most importantly, rewritten will. My name was on every page. I was the sole heir. But that wasn't the shock. Tucked between the documents was a letter addressed to someone else. To Colton and Rachel. I froze. Those names I knew. Colton, my cousin. Rachel, his sister. The ones who had moved into our house with their mother after my mom passed away. The ones my father said needed help. The ones who, over time, replaced me in every photo on the mantle, every dinner table conversation, every part of my father's life. The letter was short. "You were never supposed to see this. But if Ethan finds it, tell him the lake wasn't an accident. And neither was she." I read it 3 times. The lake. My mother. I had questions that could shake the walls of this house apart. But someone didn't want those questions answered. Because when I turned around, I noticed the attic door was no longer open. It had shut quietly behind me. And I wasn't alone. The attic was dead silent. I turned slowly, every hair on my neck alert. At first, I saw nothing. Then a soft creak behind the shelves, like a breath held too long, finally released. "Hello?" I asked, voice steadier than I felt. Silence. I stepped toward the sound, heart hammering. That's when I noticed a sliver of light coming from a hidden panel in the wall, something I'd never seen before. I pushed on it gently. It opened into a crawlspace barely large enough to fit me. Inside was a single object. A black leather ledger. I flipped it open. Dates. Figures. Payments. And then I recognized Colton. Rachel. Their mother, Miriam. My father had been paying them monthly, not for care, not for support, but for silence. Page after page outlined transactions that traced back to a private clinic, hidden psychiatric evaluations, and a name I hadn't seen in years, Lena Moore, my mother. My mother hadn't passed away by the lake like everyone believed. She'd been alive, institutionalized. Hidden. And no one told me. The final pages revealed the truth. She had discovered financial misdeeds at Carter & Moore, our family firm. She tried to stop it. Tried to expose it. And the next week, she disappeared. My father, overwhelmed and manipulated, sent her away for treatment. The people I trusted, Colton, Rachel, Miriam, helped keep her away in exchange for inheritance and influence. Until the guilt caught up to my father. The rewritten will. The attic key. The truth is buried under the floorboards. That was his apology. I stepped out of the attic, cold clarity running through me. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I filed every document with my lawyer. The trust would be executed exactly as my father intended, but not for revenge. For restoration. I located the clinic. And days later, I stood in its garden, watching as a nurse wheeled out a woman with silver in her hair and a folded paper in her hand. She looked up at me. Paused. Then whispered, "Ethan?" I nodded, eyes burning. "I never stopped waiting," she said softly. And I finally understood, this story wasn't about losing everything. It was about reclaiming what they tried to hide.